right, into the next one, objects. Now, objects are really important in programming in general, and every type of language is going to have something like an object. They don't all call them objects. Sometimes they're called things like dictionaries or other types of structures. But the core concept of objects is that they're very flexible ways to store packages of information. Okay, so what do I mean? Well, I think the best thing that this is analogous to think about is sort of the way we thought about divs. So when it came to HTML, a div was kind of like, it's kind of just like a structural basket that held your headings or your paragraph tags or your buttons or whatever. So an object is kind of like a basket that holds little pieces of information. Now, let's see what one looks like. So if we comment out what we did before with an array, we're going to have our pick a random word from an object here, and we can see I define an object here. Now, let's break that down a bit, and instead of looking at this one right off the bat, let's do what we did last time and make a sample object. Okay, so let sample object equals, and just to confuse you, we use these curly brackets to define an object. I know that's what we also do when we're making a function. We put everything inside those curly brackets, but here we are using the curly brackets to define, basically, it's like the beginning and end of the object in this case. So this, again, it's just a variable. So this isn't like running a function. This isn't like actually a bit of code that will just do anything on its own. It's a variable, so it's just a stored piece of information, the same way we were storing a number or storing some text. In this case, we're storing like a basket of information. So a sample object might be, let's say it's a student, right? So the student might have a name, so we might put Victor. Now they might have an age, so I am 35, so okay, and they might have a grade, which let's give me an A+, because why not? So in this case, you can see it makes sense for me to have put this information together. That's one student. I don't really want to put like, let student 1 name equals Victor, let student 1 name or 1 age equals 35. You can see how that gets really crazy if we were to define each of these as their own separate variable. So instead, with an object, we can define like a little package that says name, age, and grade. Now, these different things inside the object are called properties, okay? So this name is a property, the age is a property, the grade is a property. They're all a property of this object, okay? So this little thing, the thing that says name, age, and grade, that's called the property name. So when we're defining our object, we can use any property name that we want. But it doesn't take every format. Again, we have to stick with the formats that we've seen before. So, like it's okay to have that camel casing, the lowercase, uppercase. It's also okay to have the underscore, but we can't have a space in this, that will break it. We also can't have a dash in it, that will also break it. There are exceptions to this, okay? But generally try to avoid using spaces and dashes. You might sometimes see it later on in your career and you'll be like, hey, I thought he said you could never do that. Okay, there are ways around that, but generally to be a good programmer here and don't make everything more complicated for yourself and others. Just stick to using those basic naming principles that we've used, underscores or different casing. That's the easiest way to do it. So now we can see that that's how this object worked here. Now, just to make it really crazy and you start to see the flexibility of JavaScript coming out, or the kind of way that there's a lot you can do here, even though we've just talked about some variables, is that if I wanted to have, let's say, courses that I took, I might want that to be a list, and it might be math, art, and computer science, right? So I've just made an array as one of the values of a property in my object. Let me say that again. I've just made an array as one of the values of the property in my object. So an object can contain all these different types of variables. You can do objects. You can do objects inside objects inside objects, and you will actually sometimes even see that in programming. And you can put arrays inside objects, and you can put objects inside arrays, And then inside all of those, you can have strings and numbers and blah, blah, blah. It gets crazy, right? So I just need you to know that, because you're going to be working with objects all the time when you're doing JavaScript, and we're going to work with them as we get into the mapping world. It's how we're going to do our geographies. It's how we're going to store information and reference it later. And there's all kinds of stuff about what we do with objects. So just as one more example here, if I wanted to have a sample class, it might be a list of students, right? So we had the list of students before, just putting their names. Now, if I wanted to, I could put a list. So we have our square brackets. And then as the first item in our array, we make it an object. So I have name equals, what was it, Sasha, and then age, let's say 30, right? And then we can have, for the second item in our array, we have another object. And this one is Dave, and his age is 32. Okay, great. And then on the third, we have name, Victor, age 35. Okay, so now what we have here is an array of objects. This is a very common thing that you'll see when you're programming, because a lot of time we're passing stuff like this, like lists of students, and then we have to do some kind of thing like calculate grades or list them on a page for people to see every student. And we might have, oh, it's like a student and their age and what class they're in and how long they've been at the school. So we want all those pieces of information. So in a way, you can think of an array of objects as kind of like a table with headings at the top, like you see in Excel, and then it's got some information for every row in the table. That's similar to what we're doing here with an array of objects, okay? Now, we will be doing a lot more with objects in practice, and we'll see them all over the place, but let's just move on to seeing how it works in our example, and then we'll come back and learn more and more, and you'll keep learning about objects throughout your career, okay? So this time we're doing pick a random word from an object as our function, and we define a little object here, and we say, oh, the first property name is first word, the second one second word, third one's third word, and then again we just give our strings, word 1, word 2, and word 3. Now, when we reference them this time and we return the value, how we did last time with the little square brackets and the array number or whatever, and previously we just returned the variable directly, or sometimes just the string directly. In this case, we have to reference the specific property in the object. So we use the dot notation here in order to do that. The little dot lets us pick the specific property that we want from the object. So in this case, we tell it, oh, get the first word, 1. Oh, get the second word. Oh, get the third word. And this little dot is what's telling it to do that, okay? So just to kind of like step back, and something we've been using all this time, we've been using this math.random. So actually, this thing called math is an object, and one of its properties is a function called random. So you can even make functions as the value of a property. So it gets really crazy. Objects are crazy, and there's lots going on. But the key thing here is this dot notation is very powerful, and it's something that we'll see and use all the time. So let's just let this run, and we'll see if it works kind of how we hope for. And as I load it, I see there's actually an error. So what's the error? Well, I forgot to comment out uncomment the end of my function definition. So I screwed up and there was a little bug. Now the bug told me unexpected end of input, which is like, what does that even mean? It means that it didn't compile the code properly because something was missing, basically. The input ended when it wasn't completely closed. So in this case, I didn't close the function. So now by uncommenting that properly, I've closed the function and I can reload it. So let's reload it. And now we see, okay, we get the number 0.54, which is again between 0.5 and 0.75. So as we'd hope, we get the second word, and that's how we got it, by the dot second word in this case. And it gave us word 2 because this is the reference to get this particular value from our object. Okay, so we're using a lot of words now, like object and value and property and return and looping and if statements, and there's all kinds of terminology being thrown around now. So hopefully the quiz can help you a bit with that. Definitely feel free to watch the video again, make some notes for yourself about these terms. There's not a lot of really good ways to get around learning these without just kind of repetitively using them and running into problems doing it. But through this course, we are going to keep going and make some practical examples. And I think that's the best way for you to just start getting this terminology rolling off your tongue. So next video, we're going to go over a little bit more about functions, just one more advanced concept in there. And then we're going to move into how do we actually make stuff happen on the page directly with JavaScript. See you soon.